In the realm of comics, Marvel and DC have been the pioneers of several decades worth of stories featuring characters in the superhero genre. Despite having two iconic and influential characters transcend the medium, DC struggled to produce a feature-length film starring both the Dark Knight and the Man of Steel. However, after several years of planning, the company finally achieved its goal. In 2016, Captain America: Civil War and Batman v Superman were the most anticipated comic book movies of the year, which led to a box office rivalry. As a result, fans began making comparisons between both films on numerous occasions. In today's video, I will discuss my perspective on the subject to answer the question, is Captain America: Civil War better than Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice? After watching both films, I have identified a few similarities: the lack of strong motivation for the main protagonist and the hero versus hero concept. However, beyond this, the movies differ significantly in tone and the central themes they explore. Therefore, fans should evaluate them separately based on several key points of interest. To achieve that goal, I will analyze both movies across 5 categories to determine which film stands out the best. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has established most of its characters in standalone features and created subtle connections to each film by including post-credit scenes. This foundation allows the conflict in Civil War to feel more natural, as viewers are familiar with the characters' histories and the relationships they developed leading up to the film's events. In contrast, Superman is the only previously established hero in Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. While Batman is a known figure in Gotham within the DC Extended Universe, many of his actions before the film are largely unknown, resulting in a lack of connection between the main protagonists. As a film, Civil War presents its audience with a strong and complex narrative. However, one major critique is that the plot heavily centers on Bucky and Steve's friendship, which some viewers feel is a grand departure from the original story and doesn't meet their expectations. Even so, the story itself isn't terrible, especially since it incorporates elements from the source material that spark an interesting debate relevant to the real world. The central conflict revolves around whether the superheroes should participate in the Hero Registration Act, a law that restricts their actions and discloses their identities to the public. The government created this law in response to a major international event involving the Avengers that ended disastrously. While the narrative focuses significantly on Bucky, his role as an international fugitive, manipulated and brainwashed by a Russian organization, is a vital aspect of the film that aligns with its overarching theme. In contrast, the central conflict in BVS revolves around Superman's capacity for destruction and whether or not he will become a threat to our planet. Much like Marvel's Civil War, Batman vs Superman has a strong, complex narrative and borrows some inspiration from The Dark Knight Returns. Despite having a solid foundation, the story crumbles under the weight of its main protagonists. For instance, the relationship between Bruce and Clark before the film is virtually non-existent, making their conflict feel less impactful. Additionally, Batman's issues with Superman seem hypocritical. While Bruce has valid concerns about the Kryptonian being a potential threat, his argument loses credibility when you see him kill several armed criminals in a warehouse and endanger innocent lives while driving his vehicle. As the story unfolds, Batman's dystopian nightmare disrupts the narrative's flow and causes the film to appear sloppy and disorganized. Because of this revelation, Civil War presents a stronger, more coherent narrative as a comic book film. Civil War provided an excellent opportunity to expand the Marvel Universe by introducing various fan-favorite characters, many of whom played an active role in the film and went on to have their own movies in subsequent years. In contrast, Batman vs. Superman featured only a limited number of iconic DC heroes. Aside from the three main protagonists, most other characters appeared in brief cameos that seemed more like filler rather than meaningful additions to the story. However, these appearances foreshadowed the creation of the Justice League and set the stage for several films in the DC Extended Universe. In film, cinematic tone refers to a screenwriter's attitude or perspective towards the concept, subject matter, character interactions, and the overall narrative of the screenplay. In Captain America: Civil War, the tone is predominantly ideological, focusing on the political clash between Captain America and Iron Man. One common criticism of both Civil War and the broader Marvel Cinematic Universe, excluding the Netflix series, is that they often feel light and childish, lacking the grittiness associated with more mature storytelling. Although this claim is mostly subjective, the argument does have some merit. The MCU tends to play it safe with their movies, since their content is marketed for a wider audience. A good example of this pattern can be found in Spider-Man: Homecoming, Ant-Man, and Doctor Strange. While the films generally feature heroes overcoming numerous obstacles and learning valuable lessons, their stories aren't usually complex. Despite the critiques, Captain America: Civil War effectively explores several adult themes, especially in the film's first half, while including moments of levity. While a darker approach could have been an option, it wouldn't necessarily improve the narrative. I appreciate the more mature aspects of comics, but making every comic-based film darker doesn't ensure good storytelling. On the other hand, although Batman vs. Superman presents compelling central themes, it suffers from an excessively dark tone that pushes the main characters into anti-hero territory. For the narrative to serve its purpose and explore the contrasting views of heroes, BVS displays an ideological tone to highlight the differences in their methods and ideology. However, since Zack Snyder preferred a darker approach to his film, both characters became less heroic in their actions, which led to only a few notable distinctions between them. Because of this decision, Batman's portrayal as a jaded crime fighter devolves into an unhinged homicidal aggressor. Despite having a few contributing factors to spark this change in temperament, the conflict between Batman and Superman feels contrived. Since The Dark Knight is known for his stance against killing, Snyder goes to absurd lengths to make this version of Batman appear as a murderous vigilante to give Superman a reason to despise him. However, this tactic fails once you realize that most of their methods are the same. Both characters use fear and intimidation to assert dominance over their enemies, use excessive force, and cause massive destruction that could lead to more than a few casualties. The only real difference between them is the weapons or abilities they use to achieve this goal. In Batman vs. Superman, several issues arise from the portrayals of Clark Kent and Lex Luthor. First, Superman fails to embody the symbol of hope. He displays a warped sense of morality and expresses no regrets for the lives lost due to his actions in the fight for Metropolis and his inaction during the courtroom explosion. He also shows no remorse for the destruction he has caused. As someone who claims to protect the Earth, these shortcomings should be concerning. To earn the title of a hero, one must embody the warmth and compassion that inspires the hope they claim to represent. Furthermore, Superman's main objection to Batman and his methods makes no sense and seriously contradicts his actions. So the conflict between these heroes dissolves into a childish dispute in which neither party possesses the moral high ground. Lastly, the concept of Luthor's character is decent. However, the delivery of his portrayal felt awkward, and the actor could have provided a stronger performance. Although Ben Affleck's portrayal of Batman is the most physically imposing version to appear on screen and features a superior arsenal compared to previous iterations, his character becomes unhinged and irrational during the fight with Superman. Given that this version of the Dark Knight appears to be a seasoned crime fighter, his actions should reflect sound judgment rather than revealing critical flaws that make him susceptible to manipulation. While no character is expected to be perfect, Lex Luthor easily exploits Batman's biases, making him appear like an amateur. Another issue with this portrayal is that it downplays Batman's detective skills along with his moral code. In the comics, Batman earns the reputation of being the world's greatest detective, solving numerous crimes and outsmarting his adversaries. He also adheres to strict rules against killing, consistently striving to uphold his principles when confronting villains. Batman's morality and intelligence have often been inconsistently portrayed in live-action adaptations. However, other forms of media, especially animation, have delved deeply into these crucial aspects of his character. For instance, in 1997, the creators of Superman the Animated Series produced a 3-part episode titled World's Finest, where Batman meets Superman for the first time. Although the show targets a younger audience, both episodes tackle darker themes without suffering from jarring tonal shifts. The characters remain true to themselves, allowing their ideals to clash more authentically due to their contrasting personalities. This portrayal offers a more faithful representation of both characters and what they have come to symbolize. Captain America's portrayal remains true to the source material, with any character adjustments reflecting the evolution seen in previous films in the franchise. Iron Man also undergoes significant growth while maintaining a faithful representation of Tony Stark. However, this version of Captain America does have its flaws. In the film's first half, Steve has a strong motive and firmly stands against government oversight of the Avengers. However, when Bucky returns, the ensuing controversy undermines Captain America's credibility, as his judgment becomes clouded by his friendship with the Winter Soldier. As for the main antagonist, Baron Zemo is the weakest part of the film. Although he has a compelling backstory and a valid reason to hate the Avengers, his personality is bland and predictable. Compared to Jesse Eisenberg's portrayal of Lex Luthor, Baron Zemo is much more believable and menacing as a shadowy figure manipulating events to create division among his adversaries. While the narratives of both films are hindered by each protagonist making questionable decisions due to their biases, Cap's characterization in this film flows naturally from the Winter Soldier, benefiting from a stronger foundation as his conflict becomes deeply personal. One could argue that Batman's vendetta against Superman also became personal, stemming from the death of his employees after Clark's battle with Zod. However, those characters were only briefly shown in flashbacks, leaving the audience with little connection to them. In contrast, Bucky is Steve's best friend and has appeared in 2 films before Civil War, making his conflict with Tony much more engaging. Both movies feature incredible fight scenes, striking visuals, and impressive special effects, exploring complex themes about the existence of superhumans and their real-world implications. While Captain America: Civil War has garnered critical acclaim, it has a few flaws. Cap's motives can seem biased, especially towards Bucky, and the narrative loses momentum as the story unfolds. A deeper exploration of the central themes and a stronger justification for his stance could have added depth. Even so, Civil War presents a compelling narrative, faithfully represents beloved comic book characters, and features an impressive ensemble cast, making the stakes feel monumental, especially compared to Batman vs. Superman. For these reasons, Captain America: Civil War is the superior film. Ultimately, Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice had the potential to be a truly outstanding film, possibly even the greatest comic book movie of 2016, given that it featured 2 of the most iconic characters in the realm of fiction. However, the film failed to meet expectations due to disjointed storytelling and an inaccurate portrayal of its beloved comic book characters. While the concept of BVS is far more complex and intriguing than Civil War, the execution of the film's narrative feels less coherent. Despite the outcome of my assessment, I don't think Batman vs. Superman deserves to be labeled a terrible film when viewed through the lens of what the director aimed to achieve. The film endeavors to redefine the superhero genre, portraying its characters as modern mythological figures that challenge our perceptions of heroism. In that regard, Zack Snyder succeeded in his vision. However, he ultimately squandered the story's potential by presenting representations of Batman and Superman that felt unfaithful to their true essence. For this analysis, I focused on the standard edition of BVS rather than the ultimate cut. There's no way in hell I would compare a 2-hour Marvel movie to a 3-hour DC film.